Sometimes things aren't always as they seem. On the 11th of March in 2011, a Lululemon manager came in for her shift in the morning when she noticed the store was unlocked. Frightened, she went to the line at the Apple store and asked a guy who had been standing in the line for a couple of hours if he had seen anything. He said that he had seen nothing, but he offered to walk into the Lululemon with her. As they walked in, it looked as though there was a robbery. Receipts everywhere and cash registers open. However, the closer that they got to the back, the more things seemed out of place. And then they saw one bloody footprint after another. When she finally got to the back, she found her coworkers who had shifts the night before. They were covered in blood and completely unresponsive. She thought they were both dead. The police and ambulances arrived immediately. One of the girls in the back, named Jana Murray, sustained 331 wounds. This was done between 5 different weapons. This killing obviously seemed personal. They went to go attend to the other girl, Brittany Norwood, and they noticed that she was still breathing. She was tied up by zip ties and had superficial wounds all over her body. Follow, share, and add me on Instagram for part 2. So this is part 2 to the Lululemon murderer. After one murder and an attempted murder, the police had to take action immediately. They started interviewing so many people that were around the Lululemon at the time and Brittany Norwood herself. Also took note at the state of the place when they found it. The alarm was turned off with the key, the tools were out everywhere, and the size of the footprint was a US 14 shoe, which is fairly big. The story was that 2 masked men broke in, beat, and assaulted the 2 girls. Police looked for weeks for 2 men that fit their description to walk by. When they finally found men that fit the description, they interrogated them and found no proof. They did find that the randomness of such a cruel act was really odd, so they went back from the beginning and interviewed Brittany again. This time, her story wasn't adding up. Once eyes turned to Brittany, a whole history of hers popped up, specifically a history of stealing things. Recently, Jana had accused Brittany of attempting to steal a pair of yoga pants, so the police found their motive. My Instagram is below, part 3 will be next. Hey guys, and welcome back for part 3 of the Lululemon murderer. The store manager that had found them specifically found everything to be odd, considering that she actually had called Jana after she had locked up the store the night before and was leaving on her way home. So why did she go back? Brittany had actually called her and stated that she had left her Metro card inside of the Lululemon, so Jana came back to let her in. The moment that Jana walked in, Brittany confronted her for going to management after she saw her steal the leggings. The argument turned to a brutal attack. Then Brittany staged the scene to look like they had both been attacked and assaulted. Then she put on a pair of size 14 shoes and left a trail of bloody footprints to make it appear as though a large man had been there. She put the superficial wounds on herself and bound her own ankles and wrists. While the police originally believed the story of the masked intruders, it did not take long for them to see through the lies. She was now the sole suspect. A nearby store then reported that they heard 2 women arguing the night of the murder. That's when they knew for sure that they had the right person. In January of 2012, Brittany was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole.
Okay, story time. So I work at a jewelry store, and today a man came in looking for a gift for his wife for their 10th year anniversary. He ended up picking out a piece that said, "My beautiful wife." And I said, "Anything else for you today?" And he said, "No, that's it for her, but I do want to make another purchase using a separate credit card. And could you possibly create a different account for me?" And I said, "Sure, what are you looking for?" And he said, "Do you have anything that says girlfriend?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Perfect, I'll take it. And do you have anything that says happy 1-year anniversary to go with it?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Perfect, I'll take it." So I boxed everything up all nice and I put them in their respected bags. He had me mark a K for Kristen on the bottom of his wife's bag and an L for Laura on the bottom of his girlfriend's bag. I put pretty bows on them. I handed it to him. I said, "They're gonna love it. Have a nice day." And he said, "Thank you." And shit, I just remembered that his wife's name is Laura and his girlfriend's name is Kristen. I must have mixed up the bags. Oops.
This is why you should always trust your gut. In the 1970s, a young couple decided to go for a late-night hike in the woods. A couple minutes into their walk, and the man remembers thinking something's not right. He tells his girlfriend, but they just decide to ignore it and keep going, until he steps on something that felt really soft, like it was alive. Before he has a chance to see what he stepped on, they hear all this rustling in the bushes next to them and they bolt. Years later, that couple turns on the TV and a death row inmate who's about to be executed is being interviewed. And they ask him, "Was there ever a time that you were almost caught red-handed?" He responded, "Yes, one time. I was in the woods and a couple walked through and the man actually stepped on the body of a girl I had just killed. I was hiding in the bushes just a few feet away. They didn't see me." That couple had run into one of the worst serial killers of all time, Ted Bundy.
Okay, so this is one of the most insane catfishing stories that I've ever told. About a year ago, I became friends with a girl. We'll call her Mary. Mary and I hit it off really well. We instantly vibed and became best friends. She always talked about this guy that she was dating named Justin, and they sounded like they had a pretty good relationship. One day, she told me that Justin actually had a really good friend who was good looking and kind of wanted to meet me. So of course, I was excited and I told her to give him my number. I got both his number and his Snapchat, and dang, he was cute. We messaged all of the time, literally for 3 weeks straight, nonstop. I was dying to meet him in person, but anytime we had plans, something always came up or he had some sort of excuse. I found out that he was snapping some other girls, so I just thought maybe he wasn't that into me. But when he talked to me, he acted like he really wanted to be my boyfriend. Not too long before we were supposed to meet though, he told me he had feelings for my friend Mary, which hurt a lot. I had a group message with him, Justin, and Mary on it. That's when I noticed a pattern. Y'all are not ready for what happened next. Follow and share and I'll do a part 2. Okay guys, so here's part 2. The pattern that I noticed is that none of them would text me at the same time. It was either Justin or Mary or the guy that I was talking to. And his story would continuously change. He said that him and Mary had talked before, and now he has feelings for her again. It just seems so out of the blue. But he tried to make it seem like it was okay because Justin now had feelings for me. I was just done at this point and I went to the internet to go super sleuth. So I typed his first name and his last name into Google. His name pulled up an Instagram with the exact guy who had been messaging me, who already had a girlfriend. And it looked like they had been dating for a long time. So I put it all together and I realized it was Mary playing both the guy that I was talking to and Justin, and taking pictures off of their social media. I contacted the real guy and his girlfriend, and we all decided to go confront Mary. And she straight up denied everything. It wasn't until later that she hit me up out of the blue and apologized for it. I honestly realized half the things she told me were untrue. So please be careful about who you let into your life. Follow for more stories, and if you have one, DM me on Instagram.
Whenever somebody asks me how I got so good at makeup, I just tell them about the time that my mom put me in solitary confinement for 2.5 months with no phone, radio, TV, computer, nothing like that. I couldn't even eat dinner with my family. They put cameras outside my room so that I couldn't leave without them knowing. I had to call on the intercom to ask to use the bathroom. But my mom gave me a curling iron, a straightener, and a crap ton of makeup to keep myself busy. And then she told everybody she knew that I tried to kill myself, and that's why she had to put me in solitary confinement. So when I went back to school that fall, I had a lot of explaining to do to my friends about why I had been missing for the last 2.5 months with no contact, but at least I came out kind of hot. I wish I was making this up.
I will never, and I mean never, forget the time that we had a male sub in high school and a girl asked to go to the restroom and he said sure. So she grabbed something and he heard a wrapper and he was like, oh, if you're gonna eat candy, you can do it in here, but you have to share with everyone in the class. And she was like, what? And he was like, well, I heard the wrapper. And she whips out a tampon, shoves it in his face, and she goes, you want to share? Oh, girl, savage.
This is why you always say yes to tandoori chicken. In 2012, a high school tutor and her student stayed up so late one night studying that by the time they were done, the buses had stopped running. Without another way home, the student asked if he could stay the night at her place. Reluctantly, she agreed. When they got back to the apartment, she fell asleep on her bed and he fell asleep on a blanket next to her bed on the ground. A few hours later, she wakes up to the boy standing awkwardly in the middle of the room with a very strange look on his face. She asks him, what's wrong? He looks at her and says, I'm really hungry. Let's go get some tandoori chicken. Confused, she says, it's 2 a.m. Just get a snack in the cupboard. And he grabs her by the arm and he says, no, we are getting tandoori chicken right now. And he yanks her from the bed. Feeling totally caught off guard by this whole situation, she goes into the hall with the boy, and as soon as the door shuts behind them, she can tell that he is terrified. He looks at her and just says, I'm not actually hungry. When I woke up, there was someone under your bed.
Biatches, if you ever want to compliment someone but you just can't find something worth complimenting and you don't want to lie, all that you have to do is make a statement with excitement. One time, I had a teacher come in with very ugly shoes and all that I did was, oh my god, insert name here, are those shoes new? And she went, yes they are, thank you. Do you see what I did there? It's a scam.
A little girl made me cry last night. So the coffee shop that I work at also has ice cream. And so this lady had brought in her granddaughter to get ice cream. This little girl's probably about 4 or 5 years old. And she asked for ice cream with sprinkles. And so I absolutely loaded it with sprinkles because she's a kid and I have a heart. And the entire time this girl's eating her ice cream, she just keeps glancing at me. And right before they're about to leave, the grandmother brings her up and says, "Okay, tell her what you wanted to tell her." The little girl looks up at me and goes, "I think you're a princess." And the grandmother goes, "Tell her why you think that." And the little girl looks up at me and goes, "Because you remind me of sunshine."
This is why you should always trust your parents. In 1990, a father and his 15-year-old son worked together at a gas station in Florida. One night, the boy was sitting outside on a break when he saw a crazy-looking woman walking towards the store. They were in a high-crime area and it was very late, so the boy turns around to look through the glass at his dad to see what he should do. His dad took one look at the woman and just shook his head, "No, do not help her." The woman walks up to the boy and says, "Hey, my car's broken down, can you give me a ride?" Before the boy can answer, his dad bursts outside and says, "You need to leave here immediately." Angrily, the woman turns and leaves, cussing them both out the whole way. 1 year later, the boy's in his room at home when his dad calls from the other room and says, "You gotta come in here and look at the TV." On the screen was the same woman from the gas station. Better known as Eileen Warnos, she was a serial killer who used to pick up her male victims at gas stations in Florida. She was later put to death.
So this is a story time about a crazy ex-girlfriend. Have you guys ever dated someone that was still dealing with an ex that couldn't get over them? So I met this guy and we hit it off really, really well. We decided to pursue a relationship together and everything was going amazingly. However, when we got together, he did warn me about his ex, which I thought was weird because you shouldn't be in a relationship if you should be worried about someone else. While this did seem odd, I never really thought much of it. Until one day, I was getting ready for school and my sister walked in and asked me why I made a new Instagram. I was beyond confused, but there it was. An entire Instagram made about me, posting stuff that I would never post. I don't even want to say what the contents of it was. So when I went to school later that day, I talked to each of my friends and asked them if they had made it. Maybe it was some joke or something, but all of them were like, no. But then when I got home, I noticed that I received a DM saying that they knew exactly who was controlling the Instagram account. Follow and share, and I'll upload a part 2. Hey guys, and welcome back for part 2 of my crazy ex-girlfriend story. I also want to thank you guys for supporting me. We're getting really, really close to 1 million. So I opened the message of the girl who said she knew who made the Instagram account. I realized that the message was from my boyfriend's ex's best friend too. She told me that obviously it was the ex-girlfriend and that she was really, really crazy and that I need to be careful and watch my back. I was absolutely terrified. I couldn't really tell if this was a joke or not. I was hoping that someone was just messing with me. I ended up reaching out to the account that was posting about me and tried to confront her on the situation. Soon after I messaged this fake account, she ended up deleting everything, which is good, but I got some more stories from her best friend. Whenever her and her ex broke up, she actually claimed that she was the devil's daughter and could hear and see stuff or something like that. She basically just did a lot of stuff for attention. So the moral of the story is please be careful if you're dating someone with a crazy ex. If you guys have a story you'd like me to share, DM me on Instagram or just follow for more content.
Yes, this really did happen. In 2015, a man woke up to a strange post-it note sitting on his desk. On it was a to-do list that he didn't recognize in handwriting that didn't look like his. Since he was up late the night before doing some work, he assumed he must have written out the list when he was half asleep and kind of forgot about it, so he just crumples it up and throws it away. 2 weeks later, he wakes up to dozens of these post-it notes all over his wall, and they're all blank except for one that, in the same weird handwriting, says, "Our landlord isn't letting me talk to you." Now feeling totally freaked out that some crazy person is crawling around his apartment at night, he starts looking for signs of a break-in, but there aren't any. Instead of calling the police, he shares his experience on Reddit asking for help, and one user's comment literally saves his life. Turns out the man was writing the notes to himself and then forgetting, because his brain was slowly dying due to a carbon monoxide leak that was only discovered because a user suggested he install a detector. This is what they meant when they said, "Don't talk to strangers." In the early 1900s, a 10-year-old boy was playing in the woods when a tall man appeared and asked if he wanted to come back to his cabin for dinner. Totally caught off guard, the boy reluctantly agrees and begins walking. When they get to the cabin, the boy is relieved when he sees Paul, a family friend, sitting on the porch, so the boy happily goes inside. After they eat, the boy says thank you to the strange tall man, says bye to Paul, and then he leaves. He had only walked a few steps when he sees his family, along with Paul, running up the path towards him, frantically asking if he was okay. Confused, the boy says, I'm just fine, and he looks at Paul and he's like, why didn't you tell them I was with you at the cabin? And he points over his shoulder. Paul glances over the boy's shoulder and then narrows his eyes and says, you were kidnapped by a cult 3 days ago. No one's seen you. Terrified, the boy turns around to look at the cabin he just came from, and it's gone. All he sees is a dark forest that stretches for miles.